I would have been left behind. Alright. Alrighty then. Yeah. This is not a qualifying match yet, but the winner of this will go on to a qualifying match. The winner of this, in fact, will go on to face Clem. And what could be another TVP or TVT. In the top right, as the red Terran, it is souL. In the bottom left is the blue Protoss, it is Drogo. Oof. So a few more matches left in this qualifier. Marine Lord defeated Stefano 2-0 to face Sort of. And Strange beat Adrian, and Art beat Crow. So they're now facing each other. You can always look at the bracket yourself with exclamation point bracket, or just go to Wikipedia. So, what does souL feel about this matchup? I don't know, personally. But I am very scared that he's one of the players that doesn't, not just that they don't like it, that they think that they don't have a balanced matchup playing out here, but that they believe it so strongly that they allow that mentality to crush them, you know, prematurely, basically. They're already defeated before they even started because they figure they're going to lose type deal. Unless I've watched a Terran stream or something like that, or heard their mentality or seen tweets, I'm kind of inclined to believe that's the case. But that's been the case for some time, even before the proxy meta came to be, for the reasons it came to be. I still was kind of like, yeah, this matchup is really something that hits some Terrans hard. It hits some Protoss hard as well, don't get me wrong. But that's also something that I'll have to, like, it's more so I'll see a Protoss tweet about it and be like, okay, so they in particular don't like this matchup, whereas right now I'm almost defaulting to the Terran is gonna think they're gonna have the struggles. It just depends on how they tackle it. Do they feel like it's imbalanced, that they literally cannot win, or is it more like, well, I have to do this thing in order to make it seem balanced? So is it the tank pushes, or is it something else? I mean, hey, earlier today we saw Clem take on a Protoss. Was it Strange? I don't remember. I think it was. And he did macro. I mean, there's lots of harassment with the Widowmine drops, but it was a macro game. So we might see souL do something similar. It seems that the Europeans aren't quite on board with the 2 base all-in or die mentality that the Koreans were showcasing in their qualifiers. 2 base all-in / fake third all-ins, I suppose. Believe it or not a ton of 1 base proxies that literally stay on 1 base. More the 2 base stuff, but still. It seems like the Europeans are still playing the 1 Rex expands to the 3rd CCs and just trying to, you know, get the macro game going. Drop at a good time, get a good concave, get appropriate counters, you know, that type of stuff. Ethermal even going for, like, mass tanks, for instance. This Widowmine is a cool idea, but it pops off an Elusive Phoenix instead of an Oracle, which is what it would have wanted to do. Oops, excuse me. There's no Oracle because it is a Robo opener. Kind of surprising. I've been seeing so many Twilight Council openers, and then below that option, you know, the likelihood is the Stargate, and then Robo has kind of always been 3rd on the list of openers for Protoss and PvZ and PvT. I guess it's 2nd on the list for PvPs, but anyways, so it's a little surprising to see that. And there's usually a reason for it in this matchup, and that's to go into Robotics Bay about as quick as possible. Usually with 1 Forge, decently timed 3rd base, but not nearly as quick as some other builds they've got. You know, that type of thing. We're all going into that type of stuff. And there's that 3rd Nexus. Actually, that's a faster 3rd Nexus than I really thought. I said decent. I was thinking more like 5, maybe even 530. But this is like, at 430, it's almost like seeing a Stargate expands pattern, so that's surprising. I'm not sure what was... Okay, so Stalker died of the Widowmine, and then Observer got scanned, something along those lines, or got caught by the Raven. Ah, so it was an auto turret that died. I heard an exploding sound, and I was like, well, that sounded like a mechanical explosion. Oh well. Cat's gone. Anyways, so this third Nexus, when you go for Colossus, I want to say, more often than not, you get these structures before the third Nexus when you go for Colossus. Going for Colossus and then adding on a third Nexus so you have a big area to defend, and more importantly, you don't have this easy peasy choke to defend and only a couple units up here, right, for any drops that happen, usually means that you're on very unstable legs, which is literally what a Colossus is on. It looks like it should be toppled over by a faint breeze. But game-wise, that's what it seems like when you go for third Nexus this fast. But if the Terran player is playing this particularly defensive game, you know, they maybe go for tanks that maybe they do a push out on, but maybe they're just kind of playing a little reserve because they figure Blink Stalkers are on the way, because hey, it usually is. They're not going to hit that appropriate timing. They're not going to pressure and make you trip up fast enough. They will eventually pressure. They will eventually trip you up. But by that time, you're already saturated on 3 bases. You're starting to get a big enough army to split as well, and you should be tackling, you know, drops left and right better and better, or a direct fight better and better. I paint this almost like a bleak picture, and I really shouldn't, because it's not. But it is something that's, you know, I guess as the metas continue to swing back and forth, there's times where they go mass charge lot, and they get faster Archons and Storms, and Terrans go, well, this is dumb. Maybe I'll just play macro and try and take advantage of them being overconfident. And there's times where the proxies will force the Protoss to be too reserved, and like it goes back and forth. But right now, Drogo kind of getting away with this third base full saturation already, and having 2 Colossus, and he just finished up a Templar Archives. He had to get something up, and that was having his double upgrades. But even then, he still almost has charge and +1. This was so close to being a really good army to fight with, but he actually kind of just lets souL into a very good position, takes out a Templar Archives, I believe that was, so no more Archons here. But the rest of the army should go down. It's going to sacrifice itself potentially for... Oh, no! Ooh, nice use of the Raven for Interference Matrix. Gets an Archon and a Colossus, but that doesn't stop them from running away, so they're still alive? Well, maybe I spoke too soon. Okay, Colossus lives. Even takes out the last Marauder that was hoping for the last shot or two. Drogo might have lost a Nexus as well as Templar Archives, but he saves the majority of his army. Now, that wasn't a very big army, but it was coming in from a really nice angle. Half of souL's army was fighting the Nexus after all. And that is a age-old question. You know, there was definitely a TVP meta. We all remember Pult, right? Nice snipe on that Colossus. Where you might kill 4 Nexus, but can you survive the counter? Now, with that snipe on the 3rd Colossus, it is starting off strong for souL, who is on 3 bases, but he's not, like, really saturated quite yet. There we go, back in SCV production. So he can replenish the Marauder count he just lost. But Drogo didn't have a Warp Prism. He didn't have a lot of ground units there, so a Concave would have given him some trouble. And he didn't even have Blink in case there were some Liberators out and about. It really would have been a situation where 2 Liberators suddenly look scary when usually they just get blinked upon as soon as they try to re-siege. So Drogo takes the opportunity to move forward, but then instantly pulls back, really. Sets up a defense in his main base. And sets up a defense in his other 2 bases. Sorry, I missed a sub earlier as well, but thank you, Abs, for the Twitch Prime sub. And then Mr. Yates for the $5. Thanks for casting. Thank you for supporting. Truly appreciate it. So this Protoss army was a little bit far forward, wasn't it? I was reaching farther than I expected, and I can't tell if he was accidentally still had his units clumped up in the same hotkey or what was going on there, but almost out of position to save the 4th Nexus. Now he's getting back into the proper position, especially since Observer or something saw this army over here. Also still has Stalkers over here, but more importantly, Well, actually, what's so important? There are some zealots in the third base. They're taking out whatever was left of the SCVs. They're in the main base as well, so this does seem to be a little more important because it also takes eyes off the main army fight maybe, but no, Drogo goes a little too far forward against the concave of mostly Marauders and loses a Colossus for it. Also no Observer to take care of these Widow Mines. They get two pretty nasty blasts, and that is not the full might of Drogo's army. It's so much over here, and he does still have zealots on the other side of the map. He was looking for more warpins, it looks like, but is caught a little awkwardly. Everyone's attention is being divvied up to different places. souL picks up his units and tries to get into a blank dead area, dead space, but doesn't find it. There's not a lot in Cerulean Fall, so one medevac goes down. The Stalker's still in the main base, and this is actually looking really bad for souL, who's wishing for a recall right now. Fortunately for him, there is the dead space here, so that does work out. Although I think if the Stalker... okay. No, there is enough dead space here. It was here where things are getting tricky. Anyways, that would have been a really bad loss of army if there were more zealots that had to be dealt with, but lucky for souL, he dealt with it eventually, even took out the Warp Prism, it seems, with the Liberator, which doesn't happen too often, and is able to safely unload his units with his other units. Now, behind all this, as hectic as that almost was, Drogo did not lose his fourth base and still continues on with his upgrades. Is replacing that third Colossus finally. Well, it only just started, so that's not going to help out for a little while longer. And still has some good sight on the map. In fact, really good sight. As Observer seeing the army is absolutely critical, but he has pylons over the right side and even a Stalker off to the left. He's going to take the fight. Stalkers are a little late to the party, so Liberators will get a couple of shots more than they really should have. In fact, they're not even target firing the Liberators. There we go. But the Archons are soaking up most of the Marauder shots, so they did their job pretty damn well. And the Colossus are able to shoot from behind. GG. souL not quite able to power through. I'm thinking that he's going to be a little frustrated with how the game started. What Drogo did, I still would say was a little greedy. The land is +1 was what made it maybe not the greediest thing I've ever seen, but 430 Nexus when you're expanding with Colossus. I don't know. And then you don't have any real support for your Colossus either. You have a Colossus, but you have like 6 units on the ground and none of them are upgraded. No blink, no charge. Then he also went into charge first instead of blink, which sometimes can really backfire. If souL was going into a lot of Vikings to handle the Colossus, Drogo wouldn't have had much say about it, but... But anyways, it worked out well for Drogo. I think it worked out especially well because he took on the army like he did when souL sniped his natural nexus. I think that was ultimately a win for the Protoss player. We'll see if Drogo is able to get away with it again. That's certainly a type of third nexus sighting that if you were going to go for a tank push, if you had tanks, I should say, then you would probably go, okay, you know what, I am going to tank push you. Because there's that decision. If you see a bit of a later third nexus, you get some hints they're going into fast charge, maybe you don't do it. If they're not going for a third nexus and they're still on 2 base, like then you probably shouldn't do it. A mistake I make all the time. If you see a third nexus, you get some visual on the robotics opener, or you figure it out, and you see robotics bay as well. I think you would go for it, but you would need to already be set up for it, and souL never even bothered getting tanks that game. Well, Drogo's certainly got to change up his plans, because we have something on the way already. In the bottom right, the Blue Protoss, it is Drogo. In the top left is the Red Terran, he is souL. And he is not just doing a barracks proxy into whatever factory, starport placement he wants to do. No, he's going to go for Tyrax. Not so common in this matchup, but it's not the first time I've seen it. You do go into Reapers, and it can do a lot of damage. You can even snowball to a victory. So this is not what I was expecting, and there was a gas. That's, to be fair, I didn't actually look at that, but there is one, so it kind of just like, I would have doubled down on the whole Reaper idea. It's not a Reaper, it's a Marine Rush. So not the Reapers and trying to get as many kills as possible into a factory a little later on, but rather the Marines, almost like a versus Zerg build. And then you go into a factory back at home, but you're bunker rushing. It's a Protoss player with a macro idea behind it. This is the first time I've seen this, so my bad. See if it's worth it. The Zealot takes care of the SCV blood in the bunker on the high ground, and we'll even get the SCV that could repair this one. No, it doesn't, but it's one swipe away anyways. This isn't going to be very efficient for Drogo. I'm surprised he's not waiting for any more units. Okay, there's a Stalker now. Yeah, hard to say. I don't think the probes had to be lost in this high of a number, but I mean, you know, when all is said and done, I think the difference would have been something like 8 probes dying instead of 11, because that did get a little hectic. So, you know. Okay. This is interesting. So the factory wasn't even put down that quickly. He did spend minerals on building the bunkers, so though he had enough gas to slap it down, it took a little while. So I wasn't even cancel the bunkers on the high ground. I guess he wants to see what's popping out of the... Oh, okay, there we go. Drogo goes down to 13 workers, but his Nexus lives, and he could put everything into probes. He's afraid of the follow-up. His probe did scout the main base of souL, and you got to see there's a gas, but you don't know if that factory's being proxied and it's another all-in, which it absolutely could be. So just by this confusion is probably even more damaging than the probe kills itself. When I say confusion, it's not really confusion. It's like, yeah, you don't have the full knowledge of what's going on, but he's not exactly making the wrong choice. Like, he does have to defend against a follow-up attack. It's just not the Cyclone that he might have been expecting. It's Marauder slow. So unfortunately, his shield battery in the main is not going to help out his Nexus, and that was the one thing he really had going for him here. If he loses the Nexus as well, which if that bunker gets up, I think he does lose the Nexus, then that's probably a game for souL. This is weird. It's very weird. I'm not even sure, like, so Drogo would have had to dealt with the first attack better so that he would maybe have a pylon of shield better than natural, and he would have also 3 Stalkers and a Zealot and a Sentry. Like, this would have really had to have been nipped in the bud to have a clean defense. I don't think there's any way to cleanly defend this attack, even if you scouted it. I am hesitant to believe that Drogo could have done anything about it. Maybe pull the probes to stop the production, or I guess if you caught it early enough, you could try and snipe the tech lab. It's tough. Yeah. So Stargate is a good option. It's usually a good option against anything that gets weird for Protoss, right? Like a versus Zerg if there's an early pool. Versus Terran, it is sometimes the worst option, but most proxies it works out all right. You know, Phoenix can help lift tanks and Cyclones, and then it also gives you the chance to scout without committing. Although I guess the Hussein Phoenix also does that, but it doesn't just scout, which this one even failed doing. It gets harassment done. So there's a chance that this Oracle does, I mean, even 3 SCVs worth of damage is something. That's usually what it gets nowadays. Well. That's enough Marines to take on an orb. Wait, wasn't it? Am I crazy? Oh, auto-turret range is pretty sick. Wait, am I crazy? I don't know how many... I thought that was 5 Marines. Well, I guess he kind of glided, so the micro helped. Well, anyways, the Marauders targeted an SCV, which is also what freaks me out. So regardless of that, we do have a second Oracle and a third one, I believe, just popped out. Those could be used in conjunction with each other to kill SCVs. They could also be used to snipe something such as a Cyclone or a tank. Yes, 2 Oracles will definitely kill both of those units. Maybe not literally both, but if they chose one, they'd kill it. Raven's a little low on energy, but should have an auto turret again soon. And Interference Matrix. I keep forgetting Interference Matrix is only 50. It's such a damn good spell. Auto turret's also a damn good spell. Ravens are actually just really good. I just can't use them. So, I don't. But they're really good. Just the Interference Matrix is so good sometimes. Like, taking out 2 tanks, 2 Colossus. God. Anyways. As I was saying, Cyclone is easily taken out, since it was already a little weak anyway. Oracle's not gonna survive. This is a little bold, but to Drogo's credits, the missile turret's over a little left, usually a little more left. Now the first one going down is an oopsie. The second one going down is a bit more hurtful, not just because that's 300. Wait, no, that's 300, 200 gone, but also because he's intentionally making a lot of Oracles. He's now making combined together is now a 4th Oracle, but plus the 2 that I lost, right? If he had 6 Oracles already, he is sniping upgrades. He is demolishing the missile turret before it can get too many shots off. But now he's still only on 4. That's still scary. That can still kill a tech lab. It won't kill it fast enough for the bio not to have already responded. And now this feels like a really just... It's probably gonna look silly. And not in like the Oracles are so good silly way, but I think in the, okay, the Oracles weren't the great choice way. I'm really not sure what he's gonna do with these Oracles anymore. They don't win against this army, right? Like, maybe the Stasis Trap is really good, but Raven reveals it. Okay. I mean, I had to second guess myself, but... yeah, the Bio army does it. I thought Drogo was gonna go for 4, which, if he hadn't lost 2, he would have already been at a long time ago. And he was going to try and snipe Stim or something. But then he lost 2 and then just kept making them. It was a weird choice. It's like almost mad science genius type choice where maybe they're a little low on Marines because Marauders seem so much better in the matchup. You know, when you're going up against Zealots, when you're kiting down... Or when you're kiting down Zealots and go up against Stalkers, Marauders look like the golden child of TVP. But Marines are the faster produced unit, cheaper to make too, and you usually do have a decent amount of them in the early game. So that didn't really work out. I think the other comeback tool is Disruptors, but not only is it expensive to get to Disruptors, it also takes more time, so at least your Stargate's already done and chronoing. Drogo was probably grasping for straws since the natural went down. All the Marines were damaged. That's a good point. So it's all tied up. souL did a proxy, but a weirder proxy than normal. There are so many different versions of proxies that you already feel a little bad for Protoss who are guessing, like, is it Cyclones, is it Tanks, is it Banshees, is it Liberators? And then now you're throwing them the occasional T-Rex Reaper. And apparently now you're throwing them the T-Rex Marine Bunker Rush. So now they have to worry about everyone else's cheeses. It's like the T-Rex Reaper was a TVT cheese for so long, now you can do it versus Protoss apparently. The T-Rex Marine was such a versus Zerg cheese. There was a point, let's talk about Wings of Liberty with MVP, that T-Rex was something he did against Protoss, but that has been dead for a long time. Now they gotta worry about that too? Damn, man. Protoss worrying about all the things. This is the loser's bracket, so whoever loses this match, this ace match, is just out. And we'll have to try again come WCS Qualifier number 2 for Europe, which is tomorrow, I think. And then they have a last chance, number 3, on Sunday. So who's it going to be? Who advances on to face Clem? This isn't even a qualifying match. In the top left, as a blue Protoss, it is PtitDrogo. In the bottom right, as the red Terran, it is souL. So no proxies this time for souL. So I just went over all the options that Drogo would maybe have to face if he were to scout that there wasn't a command center on the way. And luckily for him, his options are now growing smaller. The options of the Terrans grow smaller as they make more SCVs, right? We still have the question mark of whether souL is going to do a tank push. At what time does he have a tank push? Does it include a Raven? Does it include Banshees? Those are all things that could still happen. But if Europe is more inclined to play out whatever we consider normal TVPs, and we saw that from Gamer 1 from souL, then Drogo might be feeling a little more at ease overall. Thank you, Nitz, for the 100 bits. Nice probe snipe. Gets into the main to still get some scouting done. Not that it's well timed. It's actually a little off timed. No, show the robot, don't show the robot. I think that was enough time to click on it. The only reason I was calling for it to not show the robo is because it always feels bad as a Terran to be kept in the dark. So it's almost, you know, it's worth kind of staving it off for like 2 seconds, in my opinion anyways. Maybe even 1 second, right? But on the other hand, does Drogo care the robo is scouted? Apparently not. And on the Terran's other hand, they didn't actually care about scouting it this early with the Reaper. As long as it wasn't like... Well, no. Yeah, as long as it wasn't a 1-base build, which you knew that much already, right? Then he doesn't... And souL doesn't really worry so much about getting that scout, that exact scout, that, oh my god, Oracle's on the way scout. Because even if it was an Oracle on a Stargate that he hadn't scouted with that Reaper, he'd be getting Hellions in the main base with this medevac drop. So... he has many options to scout what the follow-up is, and now he does have to worry after seeing the robo, like how quickly will the Twilight Council come down? Is it a Twilight Council, or is it a robotics bay? Which he will be able to see. The Hellion drop commences. There's a pylon to the very north, on the slightest bit of dead space here, but it was good enough, and I think Drogo was paying attention to his Lucided Phoenix, seeing what souL was doing, so there was a bit of a late pull from those probes, and a late response from those units. 3 Hellions will still one-shot probes, so they get a nice little lineup. Not so far the case. So it's being handled... Okay, there's a good shot. 13 probes, the loss of the medevac, as well as the Hellions. They look for that last probe. So 14, a lot of lost mining time. I'm gonna put everything back into this gases all proper like. That was a worthwhile drop. It maybe could have been a little worse. Maybe. But it still could get worse in the grand scheme of things because, hey, we have Banshees on the way from this starport, which the Stalker is now looking. It checks where the starport was, but souL has moved it over to the top right. Nice little trick there from souL. So we have that on the way. We do have tanks, which right now is purely defensive. It's purely like, God, I hope he doesn't have 5 gateways and he's about to attack me with Blink Stalkers, which is totally just out of the question anyways. But it's also potentially something he can attack with, you know, whether he waits for stim or not, which in this case, he's going to wait for stim, but he's going to have so much damage done just by the Hellion drop. It doesn't really even matter if the Banshees do a whole lot more. If they do, great. If they don't, but they keep tabs on what Drogo's doing, also kind of great. The worst thing about this is the loss of medevac production very quickly. The starport might make it back home, because there's only 1 Stalker attacking it, right? But... I think souL will rebuild a starport no matter what happens. So the Banshees known about, but Banshees still are tricky. You can know about them. They could literally have map packs on and see a Banshee build and be like, well, I just get a shield battery here and here, and then they get an observer. It should be really, really easy. And of course, we know Drogo's gonna have an observer. He went for a robo first. And yet somehow, those devils get in there 2 at a time and start killing your probes. It just seems to always happen. But at least Drogo made sure there won't be the stupid 3rd, 4th, 5th Banshee. It seems to always be the one that does damage. There's only 2. If they pair up together, they will be able to kill probes, but then they'll increase the chance that they both die, right? So it's a choice to make. We have missile turrets on the way now for souL. One in a very anti-DT area. The other also kind of anti-DT. Oracles shouldn't be really on souL's mind since he's gotten a lot of scouting. But this one also might help against the Warp Prism. The tech lab was added back to the starport. Not for more Banshees, but rather for a Raven, and I like that. The Raven takes a long time to build. Tech lab does not take a long time to build. If they're not going to bother forcing you to lift and carry that starport back home, then it's worth just leaving it there and getting a Raven. So he did build another starport, as we can see here. He's getting some Vikings. Interesting. Oh, because he saw a Warp Prism. Because he saw a Robo. So there should be a Warp Prism. And I was going to say, he should have seen there wasn't a Robotics Bay. He hasn't seen the Templar Archives, though, so there was a chance it was Colossus. It's not. It's Archons. Hey, they're already here. souL's army might not have been prepared to deal with this many Archons, but I think it is big enough to deal with this many Archons, and that's a very important point to make. It also has +1 attack to match Drogo's +1 armor, and while Archons are nasty little buggers with this early on, especially when you're kind of contained in your own natural, the tanks will help out, and Interference Matrix might help out, and the bunker even will add something here too. Warp Prism dropped stuff into the main, but that was the least obnoxious way possible. If it had dropped it into the mineral line, then more of the army has to go south, and then maybe that opens up the north side. But they just literally kind of like shuffled to the side and took care of that. Third Nexus was under fire by a single Banshee, and there wasn't a shield battery. I don't think it did that many more. It's only been 4 extra probes dead since the Hellions earlier on. Anti-armor missile is the choice. It does take out that one Archon very, very quickly. Second one goes down rather quickly. I think they would have gone down quickly regardless, though. It's just a lot of bio to be adding damage in here, and this doesn't seem like it's a good game for Drogo at all. That did not end up being the attack he was hoping for. If souL's army had been carelessly around the 3rd base without its tanks, without a bunker, without the Raven quite involved, this could easily have been the flip situation. Drogo could have been winning the game right now. But because souL only had just planted down his 3rd CC seconds before, he might have lost like a couple of SCVs, but he saved the command center, saved his army, and took a great army fight. So everything's looking good for souL, up 30 supply. He will have to maneuver around tricky storms, and that's what Drogo's got to depend on here. He's got to depend on always having a backup storm in case things go wrong on the front lines. In this case, if they get sniped by Marauders, he needs to have backup ones. Later on, there might be ghosts. And he also needs to have just a lot of storms, right? Not just backup storms in case some get sniped, but just a lot of storms in general so that they will not just damage the Marauders, but actually melt through them, because the army supply getting to be where it is, as souL's 3-base saturation gets up and running here, it will be quite a drastic difference, and damaging the army and hoping that charge also take care of it is maybe not something Drogo can depend on anymore. We also have a lot of Widow Mines, another anti-armor missile, paint that orange for a considerable amount of time. souL knows the storms are ready, seeing the High Templars as they are. He does take a couple of nasty hits, and he is low on medevacs. He did not have consistent starport production, so this is where perhaps another storm could really shine through. In fact, he does try another storm to the left side, but it basically misses. One more storm here. Does he have another backup one? He's getting there. He's trying to. Also getting some Archons because the army is low. One attack from the Archons does splash, and it would splash down a lot of the Marines specifically. I'm afraid the supply might just be too good, especially as we get Ghost now into play. +1 armor finally away for souL as well, and some Widow Mines. It's just a constant rally, and it was going to be hard for Drogo to defend. But souL chooses not to go for the attack through the choke. It's maybe perhaps a little, you know, scared or just taking the storms and Archons very, very seriously. Goes for a drop. This is totally fine, considering that it is probably better for him to go for Ghost anyways. Maybe he could have forced the issue prior to Ghost, but this is going to distract, it's going to do damage, and his main army, his main attack, is going to be included with Ghost anyways, so it should go well for him. A Widow Mine got a pretty nasty shot. He would have loved to have gotten the Forge, but not going to happen. It's a long ways away for +2 anyway, so it's like, I don't know how much Drogo is thinking that'll bring him back into this game. I'm also a little surprised to see that it went for attack instead of armor. He really is, as far as damage goes, mostly depending on the storms, it feels like. He's finally included an Immortal. Oh, really cool strats there. Drops the Ghost out for an EMP on top of the army. There aren't any storms here. We got 20 seconds to go. But souL's army hasn't been healed up for some time. There just wasn't a lot of medevacs. Now that they're here, they got some energy, but they just recently arrived. Here come the rest of the medevacs. Now they have a bit of energy too. Wouldn't mind still going to pop up on a lot of these Zealots that do not have their +2. Stalkers don't have their blink. No storms here. As the Warp Prism, you would hope, if your Protoss was holding for High Templars, it's holding nothing. That's a big ol' fat nothing. It can help micro the Immortals and the Archons, I guess. Feedbacks do come through, but it's a little late to depend on the medevacs running out of energy, I think. There's so many of them, and they mostly still have energy. There we go. GG. souL takes game.